We're making our way through Hebrews chapter 11 for our Hall of Faith series, and the next reference is going to be one that maybe, it's kind of stumped me. I could make a lot of things work. I don't try to make it a habit of trying to make something that I want to see in a text. I try to be pretty cognizant of that. And there's a chance that there's not just a chance. There's going to be a lot of different ways to read Hebrews 11. We could argue about how many different ways might be the right way, but there's definitely going to be more than one way, more than a few ways to phrase even the same concept, let alone see another concept. So I've been doing something with Hebrews 11 that I think is absolutely there. I think it matches the context of what the author was doing. I think it matches what the author has set up. I think it's going to match where the author is going to head to. I'm relatively confident in the general gist of what we've been unpacking in Hebrews 11. There's always a chance that I'm completely wrong. That's just always a possibility with any of us. And so we have to keep that in front of us. But in this reference, I'm looking for insight into, it's just going to be one verse. We're back to one verse, one reference. And I'm trying to look for insight in the verse that would let me know what is it about faith that I'm seeing here. And I can see some potential options, but I'm not sure I actually have a stance that I would say, this is what I would feel confident teaching. So maybe I'll lay out some options for you, and you can wrestle with it, and then you can tell me what you think might be happening in this verse. But our next reference, so we just got done, if you remember in our last video, we just got done, which I think was a couple videos ago, a few weeks ago, last time we looked at it. But there's a whole paragraph about Moses and all the different things that Moses did by faith, and that's what we looked at in our last video. This one is going to be the people and the Red Sea. So here we go. One verse, Hebrews 11, verse 29, says this: by faith the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. So by faith the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. So I'm trying to figure out what the faithfulness component, what I'm supposed to learn from faith in the context of persevering, because I'm not trying to think about, I know the typical approach to Hebrews 11, and the typical approach theologically to having these conversations about faith is to think about faith as an abstract theological concept. And so we talk about faith, and I've been pretty intentional, if you've been watching and paying attention, to not do that in here. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to follow the author's logic in context. Like, what is the author trying to show us about all these characters that tell us something about the essence of our faith, about the quality, the kind of faith, the kind of faithfulness that we're called to, the quality of the story that we belong to, the legacy of faith that has been passed on to us. And so I think typically we would see this and we'd say, okay, it takes these people were cornered. Like, they had left Egypt. God told Moses to take them south. And now they end up cornered at the Red Sea. And Pharaoh and the Egyptian army are in hot pursuit. And they're in despair. So I'm starting to maybe pick up some similar themes to many other videos that we've already seen in this series. Like, people are without hope, and there's despair, and they can only see what's in front of them. But they have to believe that there's something more than what they can, and that might be there. That's an option. I'm going to throw that option out there. The problem is that's not what's referenced. Like, that's not what this verse actually speaks to. It doesn't speak to that. It actually speaks to them passed through. I'm assuming the walking through the Red Sea on dry land. So it could be that. It's possible. It could be that one of the things I could see in this teaching, in this verse, is that when the Israelites, I think this is what I used to always think. Like if I thought of like literally what I even thought about like 2 or 3 months ago, if I would have read this verse, what would my knee jerk, what would like 18-year-old me have thought of when I heard this passage? I think the thing I always thought of, just assumed without thinking about this verse, but just thinking about Hebrews 11, I think what I would have assumed was the Red Sea was parted. You have these walls of water, as the story tells it, and they have to choose to walk through. Like how much faith does it take to cross the Red Sea in the parted water and believe you're going to make it? Like you're seeing this miracle that makes no common sense. It's ludicrous. And so I think my knee-jerk assumption about this verse was that the faith was the trust that they had in walking through the Red Sea. But that doesn't work. I mean, it's an option. I'll put it out there as an option. But that doesn't work because the very next half of the verse says, but when the Egyptians tried to do it, they were drowned. So the Egyptians tried to go through. They had faith that they were going to get through the sea. And maybe somebody might say, okay, but they only had faith because they were following the Israelites. The Israelites are the ones that had the true faith. Like they had to step out and cross the Red Sea without seeing anybody else in front of them. Pharaoh and his army, they see the Israelites go through. They get to make a calculated decision, but their calculated decision doesn't work because it really wasn't on faith. Maybe that's the lesson, honestly. Again, it doesn't tell me that, but maybe that's what's in there. That's an option. Let's see, what might we see? By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. I think there's another part of me that is trying to make this verse about one of the other themes that we've seen in Hebrews 11, where we've talked about Jacob and Joseph. And they have to make it, or Moses in the last video. Moses had to make a decision which story he was a part of, which house he belonged to. Was he going to be associated with Pharaoh's daughter? Was he going to be associated with Pharaoh in Egypt? Or was he going to be associated as a Hebrew Israelite? Was he going to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season? Or was he going to reject that and walk in righteousness and faithfulness? Faith. So part of me sees this and says the Israelites are people that have put their faith and planted their flag in God's story, in the story of God's redemption. And the Egyptians aren't. They're planting their flag in the story of empire, in the story of flesh, what man can do. That's an option. I'm not sure that I see that directly in the text either. I'm also not sure it's true, because I don't know if the Israelites have planted their flag in that story yet. They're following instructions, not that they really have a choice here. They're essentially cornered into this act of faith. Part of me is thinking back to some of the teachings that I've heard. It's not till the other side of the Red Sea, where for the first time, God's people will call on the name of Adonai. Like it's not till after they cross the Red Sea where they finally go, Adonai, He is our God. He is our God. That's the first time that we see directly in the story them planting their flag in God's story, finding their identity as people of faith. So I'm not sure that works here either. I suppose there's an option on the table that would say it's all the above. Marty, essentially all of these themes that you're pulling out are the same exact themes of Hebrews 11 that we've been seeing, and I like that. And maybe that's exactly the case. this verse just doesn't seem quite as clean to me in the text itself. Like, I want to see that more directly in the text. And maybe I'm being too hard on that idea, because I don't know if I've seen that in the text about Jacob blessing his sons, or Joseph giving instruction about his bones. Somebody could say, like, that's not what you said about those weren't in the text. Maybe that's the case. Maybe this one just isn't quite as clear in my consciousness, and I don't really know why. So how do you end a video when you don't really know what your resolution is? Well, I suppose that we look at it and we say, whatever it is, I want to be people that would live out that story if I was given the chance. If I was given the chance, would I walk through the Red Sea? If I was given the chance, would I believe that my immediate circumstances, like even when the like taking the story as it's told, even when the Red Sea parts into two walls of water with a pathway down the middle, and who knows how that worked and what it would have even looked like, or any of the, beside the point. Even when I saw that moment, would I have believed? Like, would I have said, all right? I mean, it would be hard for me to imagine what that must have been like. I'm too enamored by the things that I can see. To be honest, I'm far too enamored with my circumstances to even believe in a miracle, even if it were right in front of my face. I don't even trust that I would look at a miracle happening right in front of me and even believe it. I don't think a lot of us would. I think we'd find some other way to explain it. Wonder if we were living in some AI-generated reality. Start looking for the 3D printer. I don't know. Would I be people who would charge ahead, not knowing how the story ends, not knowing if would I follow God anyway? I'm not sure I would, but I want to be. I want to be. Would I be people that would plant my flag in God's story, even in the face of imperial opposition? I don't know, but I want to be. And that's what the author, at the end of the day, for whatever the reason is that this verse and the Red Sea story is in the Hall of Faith, the reason is, we can be confident, the reason it's in there is because the author wants to remind us, do not shrink back. Make a decision today who you want to be. Make a decision today about what you believe. Plant your flag somewhere and be people of faith. We can't shrink back now. Like, if we're experiencing suffering, if we're experiencing persecution, not us, but the people in Hebrews, if they were experiencing persecution, the author says, well, so are the people cornered by the Red Sea. And they chose to walk on. Uh-oh, I'm going to have U2 stuck in my head now. They chose to walk on. So, those are some thoughts. I'm not sure that I'm quite there where the people who crossed the Red Sea were, but I want to be. And maybe for now, that's enough. May God give each of us the faith when the time comes, when it's tested, when our faith is put to the test. Would we be ready to show our God what kind of faith we have and follow in the footsteps of those that came before us? May it be so.